It's Chef Grueling.
Oh, yeah. You're going to start off using the C word, are you?
I am. It's the last time I'm going to use it. Peter and I were talking yesterday, and he told me that I refer to him as chef too often. Is once too often, Peter? Or is it like,
I think for us it is, yes. I think, when you're my student in my class, that's appropriate, and you aren't, so it's good.
got it? Yeah, I've always tried to describe that term to people. Like it's it's like Mister, but there's also this like term of respect about it. Like people get the position, but they don't necessarily get the term in my world.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, amongst my colleagues, we often in conversation refer to each other that way, and it is nothing more than a term of respect, sure.
Yeah, like I'm a Ritz-Carlton guy, right? And so, there was my pleasure and there was certainly, and they meant very different things depending on how they were used in context, right? And
Yeah.
I think I sometimes use that word chef the same way. Like, and I think with you, Peter, chef, I use it the way we're talking about. I think, I think there's a lot of people, and myself included, that have a lot of respect for kind of what you've done to the industry, and you're entitled to that term.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. You're very
So,
kind. And I did hear you saying that you had people sending you stories about me, and I hope you won't share most of them.
no, they were good. Like, hold on, let's see if I can find it. It's like I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but like, look, it's you with Bob McWhitaker, Ruth Kendrick, and Carrie Beal. And I don't know who the last guy in the end is. Sorry, last guy
Yeah,
in
I
the end.
can't see it well enough to know, but yeah, great. Cool.
But
Cool.
and then I brought props today. I brought this
All
one.
good.
Cool.
Sure.
And then I brought a plastic mold because we were supposed to talk about you doing a chef grueling mold.
Yes, I know.
So we want to talk about that too. We don't have to
Okay.
talk about that today, but I didn't want to
Yeah.
forget. And this is
Yeah.
my design. So this is
I
one I
saw it
designed.
today on Instagram. It's beautiful.
Thanks. And
Really
actually, you
nice.
know what? Scott, our sculptor, did a really great job on this too. Like I kind of like had the idea, and then I said, "Here, make it so."
Well, that's kind of what that's kind of the approach that I'm going to have to be taking also.
Cool.
So we'll talk about that.
Awesome. So you were telling me yesterday it's the first summer you've had off in 30 some years or something.
Yeah, an awfully long time. I actually have the summer off, and it's something I could get used to very easily. I enjoy it. I think I was 20 years old when this last happened,
And you're still, I mean, you're obviously still at the CIA. Not obviously, you're still at the CIA.
I am still at CIA. The lab classes were paused, I guess is the word.
Right.
And we're going to be starting up again in August 10th, I believe classes are scheduled to start again. So we'll be back a few days before that. And, it's going to be interesting, and we'll see how it all goes. It's another challenge.
Yeah. So how long did you guys stopped mid-March like the rest of the world stopped? Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly right. On March 13th, we paused, and they said, okay, the next 2 weeks are your summer vacation. I'm like, all right, so be it. And then after that, we all worked very hard to get curriculum online in terms of theory.
Right.
And we did that, and we taught that for a little while, and they believed they were going to be able to open in June, but of course, nobody was opening in June. So, yeah, August looks good.
Definitely New York. I mean, the challenge right now, I don't know, for those of you not from New York has like imposed a quarantine to anybody coming into the state from like, I don't know, 13 other places, something like that.
Yeah.
So your Florida students are gonna have to like, quarantine in their dorm for 2 weeks before they're allowed to go to class or something like that.
Yeah, something. There are plans for this, but they're actually not really allowed to have very much contact with us.
Anyway,
while we're away, so
right.
I don't know all of the specifics.
Got it. All right. How long? I mean, so you've been in the CIA a while. Is that a nice way of putting it?
A while, is that how we say it?
Longer than 2 years, because I think we met the first time at the CIA probably almost 15 years ago, I bet.
Okay.
And you were there. I came in and did a demo with my my mentor, Anil Rohira, and we did a demo in your class and did a demo in the
Oh
big teaching room.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but that
I
had to
remember
be,
that.
yeah, that's been a while, like
Yeah.
2005,
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
2006, maybe.
Yeah.
So you were there then. So I know you've been there that long.
Yeah. So I've been there for a while. Actually, in February, it will be, this is so painful to say, 30 years in February. And I figured I would go there for 2 years. But, you know, I kept learning. And that's one of the big reasons I went there, is because I was learning so much those first years, especially. And, you know, it was very challenging. And then as things went along, I learned that, oh boy, I really like teaching.
Right.
And now that's just truly my focus, you know, is like the whole teaching thing is great.
When you started, you taught whatever was
Oh,
available,
okay.
right? I
So
mean, like,
when I started there, I went there as a pastry chef, and I was teaching the culinary students their pastry class, which was
that
actually
they're all super bored with, and they want out of as quickly as possible, if memory serves me
well,
from. There's
some of
one.
them absolutely.
There's always
But
one that's like, this is great.
yeah, right. At that time, though, our culinary students actually got 6 weeks of baking and pastry. So they did like 3 weeks of very basic baking, and then they did 3 weeks of pastry, which is what I taught. And I mean, we did amazing things. We did pastillage, we did chocolates, we did cakes, we did plated desserts. It was kind of amazing when I look back at it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was the 1990s, you know, the halcyon days of the 1990s. But
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, I look back on that time, and I knew it at the time. I was, in my estimation and total honesty here, highly underqualified for the job. So I worked very hard. I was very scared, and I worked very hard to try to catch up. And I think I
But you
did.
came to the CIA from restaurants and things in New York, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, New York and Westchester County, Connecticut. Yeah,
Got it.
absolutely.
Was that home? I mean, where are you from originally?
Well, no, I grew up in the Finger Lakes, and you know, I had an opportunity to work at I'd been out of school for maybe a year cooking,
Right.
and was looking for a job, and I was offered or the opportunity to do some desserts at a very well-regarded French restaurant. And so I went there and I did that. And that was in just outside of Greenwich, Connecticut. And so I did that for a bit. And, you know, that kind of got me started down this road. And there was no intention to stay at that. It was like, yeah, well, to be a good chef, I need to know how to do desserts. So I'm going to go do
That's
this
like a
for a couple of
theme,
years.
Peter. That's like a theme. Like, I'm only going to be
Oh,
here 2 years. Like
yeah,
2 years, and then I'm done. I'm moving on.
yeah, exactly. That's
So
exactly
did you
it.
go to culinary school, or I mean,
Oh,
if we go
yes.
further?
Oh, yes. No, I went to New England Culinary, and, you know, I went there because I wanted to cook. and that's what I wanted to do, you know?
Right.
And it's amazing what a journey everybody's life is, I guess, you know? It takes you places you really don't expect.
Yeah, that's something that, like, I've been telling people, like, this project, this Chocolatier chat project has kind of become my little baby in a lot of ways. And what I really love about it is that little piece that you're talking about. Is like the journey to get to where we're going. Like, you know, the guy we were talking to last week, Philip Ashley from Memphis, he's like, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and I realized I wanted to make chocolate. I'm like, what were you doing at the time?
Wow.
He's like, I was working for FedEx. I'm
Wow.
like, how does that go together, right? And like, you know, you knew you wanted to be a culinarian and you wanted to cook,
Yeah.
but you didn't know you wanted to teach. And I don't think you wanted to know you wanted
Oh,
to teach chocolate, right? I mean, you
oh,
somewhere
no
in that
idea
30
any of
years,
that.
you stopped teaching the culinary students, right? I mean, and you started teaching pastry
Yeah,
students.
well, I guess they started to trust me a little bit, and I got to teach baking and pastry students in a lot of different aspects. But here was really a key moment for me. When I started there was a pastry chef there, an Austrian person, man. He was, and probably still is, 2 years younger than me, but I was very young at the time, so that made him extra remarkable.
Right.
And you know, he was amazing, and he got Marcus Fairbinger. I don't know if you know him or know of him, but he got to be the head of our department. And one day he came to me, and you've got to remember, this is like early 1990s, and he says, "Peter," I'll spare you the accent. He says, "Peter, you know what?"
I hope he does the accent. All right.
He says, "You know what just happened with this bread revolution," which was, kind of new at the time. He goes, "The next thing that's going to happen with is chocolates and candy making. And if you're smart, you'll get in on the front edge of it." And he handed me this brochure for a confectionery technology class. He says, "Go take this class." And I did. And, so I sat in this lecture room with all of these people who ran factories and scientists and not a single other chef. And I loved it. And so I kept going to those. And that kind of got me down the road. It was amazing.
Yeah, I think it's those little things, right? Like those little moments that kind of like we could ignore them.
Yeah.
Maybe we do ignore them a lot of times. And, I don't want to get into the whole coincidence, fate thing. That's way too heavy for a Friday afternoon. But, like those, I look at my own experience that there was a dessert at a restaurant called Pod in Philadelphia, which was one of Steven Starr's first restaurants, right? And I caught the dessert out of the corner of my eye as it was walking across the room, and like I knew I wanted to do dessert. Like I knew I wanted to be like at that point. It's like I think pastry is probably the home for me, and that's all about where my chair is, right?
That's pretty
like
interesting.
If my chair is here, that dessert like kind of goes behind my head.
You might be working for FedEx.
Right. I don't know. Like, I mean, I think those are the really cool things about how we get to places anywhere. I mean, definitely anywhere, but like food people and chocolatiers, as I've talked to them over the last couple of months, I mean, we all have that one little piece, right?
Yeah.
And maybe if he hadn't handed you that brochure, you would have only been at the CIA for 2 or 3 years.
It's
right?
possible. It's so funny though, because I used to go to these classes because CIA would pay for them, and I found them really interesting. I love the science of confectionery, as anybody who's talked to me or looked at any of my books knows. But every time I went to one of those, it's like, yeah, this is going to make me much more valuable. So when I'm ready to leave, I can leave. No, I have no desire to leave.
Well, not anymore. You've been there 30 years. Where are you going to go?
Exactly. Who wants me? It's no good. So it's interesting.
Grueling consulting.
Yeah. Grueling hiking. This restaurant food business is so, as we all know, is so difficult that like I would not recommend it to anybody unless it was like their absolute, obsession, passion. Right. Say do something else. If you like cooking a little bit, cook a little bit, but don't make.
Yeah, like I remember I was at Thanksgiving, and I was at my parents separated when I was young, and so holidays were that whole debacle, and this whatever year Thanksgiving it is, I'm like 6 or 7, and it's my dad's year, and I'm at the Donaghy family, and everybody's at the table with my father. Awesome, great. And so, he rolls up as like desserts being served, and like I'm like, where have you been? Why aren't you home? And he looks at me really calmly and gently and says, "Son, don't get in the hospitality business.
Yeah.
Just don't do it." And I agree with him, and he was totally and yet he was totally wrong, right? I mean, like, I think my restaurant days are in the rearview mirror, right? I mean, my true production days, I think, are in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, we hope.
But the passion to get there is got to be great, like you're saying. I mean, like you've got to. I mean, you probably have a story
Yeah.
from everywhere you've been, right? About what you've learned and how important that is to your story.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure how well I would have flourished or succeeded doing anything else. So I did the right thing for me, and there are people like you that it's the right thing for, but boy, it's a tough road for sure.
Yeah, like I mean, I worked in restaurants for years before I went back to culinary school, right? And so I remember
Uh,
the first event that we had to work, right? And I'm there with a bunch of other students. And we've been there, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And one of the women looks over at me and goes, "When do we get our break?" And I looked at her, I'm like, "When the event's over." And she's like, "But the event's not going to be over until midnight." And it's like 3 in the afternoon. I'm like,
that's when you
"Yeah,
get your break.
yeah, pretty much. That's how it's going to work for you. So sorry about
Uh,
that."
yeah,
And back to work. Go plate some more
yeah.
desserts.
There you go.
So you take this class,
Yeah,
and the rest is history, as they say, or.
I I think somewhat, and again, Marcus was such an influence to me. I have such great admiration for him to this day. And as a matter of fact, like the week that we shut down, he's in South Africa now. He's got a resort in South Africa, and I just heard from him. He was contacting me for something he wanted to look into, and I was so thrilled when I started there. I taught AM, the cookers,
Right.
and he taught PM, the kind of advanced pastry students. And so I would spend every afternoon in his class, which he allowed me to do, and that was really important to me.
But that's an important piece of the CIA, isn't it? I mean, like I worked for Anil Rahira for a long time, and
Yeah,
Anil's very close with Joe McKenna, who's now with Wegmans. But and Anil tells that story about like he was in the afternoon session, but he went to all of Joe's morning classes.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
he sat in the back and audited and listened and learned
yeah.
what he didn't learn in the afternoon. I mean, I think that's a really cool learning environment that's not true at a lot of other schools, especially in culinary. I mean,
That's
there's
true.
traditions.
It's I think we see a bit less of that now than we used to, which I think is just it's a number of factors. The schedule of classes, all kinds of different things. But it's such a great environment because, you know, anything you want to know about, you go and ask the right person, and everybody shares everything. It's amazing that way. And that goes to whether you're a student, whether you're a faculty member, no matter who you are, you go up to someone that is, to your mind, the most intimidating.
Uh-oh, we lost Peter. Hopefully he'll. Oh, you're back,
I'm
but
back.
we
I'm
lost you.
back. Yeah, yeah. You go up to this person that you consider very intimidating, and you ask them a earnest, straightforward question, and you get them full answer. Always. I've always found that to be the case.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask the question because it kind of fits in when somebody asks the question. Like, so if you weren't a pastry chef, what would you be?
Well, I had a very close relationship once with somebody who told me, and these are pretty much her words. These are not words that I would use about myself. If you weren't a famous chef, you'd be an alcoholic plow guy carpenter. That would not be my choice for myself, but
But
it's
the but
another
the but the
story.
eventual outcome is what you're just telling me. So another question that's popped up is like, are you working on another book? And you already told me no, you're done writing books.
Yeah, you know, I I started writing my book in the beginning because I felt I really had something to add to the conversation.
Right.
And I believe I succeeded in that. And I don't really feel that way now. There was a brief period of time where I had the desire to write a book that was culinary, really. But this was quite a number of years ago. And then Serious Eats came along, and they do exactly what I wanted to do, which is to write just about how to cook and write with a little bit of humor and just, follow that path. So no book.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's hard, right? There's a lot of stuff out there right now. I mean, I think especially, I had a meeting this morning on the phone about this kind of interaction and getting information in people's hands. And there's so much information out there now, and there's so many different ways to get information,
Yeah.
and to give it. And it finding, I mean, this one's well worn, right? Here, I'll show you how well worn it is. This one's well worn.
Oh, nice. Nice.
I'll complain to Wiley later, but
yeah, good luck with that.
if I tell them I'm an educator, they'll send me another free copy. But I think this was really comprehensive, right? I mean, you can tell this wasn't a 6-month project. This is 20 years of your career, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that was an undertaking for sure. And I don't know why someone would try to publish a food cookbook now and I do not call that a cookbook, but without some very specific angle, which of course that one has.
Right, you're the celebrity chef, and you're using that as the tool.
Well, no, that's not the angle that I look at with it. What I look at it is blending together a pretty good, reasonable technical understanding of the science of chocolate and confectionery, blending that together with these artisan techniques. Because, I go to these conferences like PMCA or ones like that, and these are highly educated people, like masters and PhDs in this kind of science, right?
Right.
And but they're amazed that I actually temper chocolate by hand, right? And I'm so impressed by their knowledge, and they're impressed by the things that we do, and so I kind of really tried to put the two together.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple other books along the way that we still use as sort of those master tomes, right, about whatever it is. And I think to a certain degree, you're right. Like, you have this really great technical knowledge with really good hand skills, right, and the understanding of how it works in application, right. And I think there aren't a lot of those people that can kind of go that wide and deep that you can, and I think is evident in this book,
Well,
and there's less and less of them too, in a lot of ways, in spite of the fact that both sides are growing so much.
Right. That certainly was the idea. And I'm very well aware, especially in today's world and my where I've gone, that there are a lot of people out there who make, much nicer chocolates than I do. I'm not ashamed to say. But my focus is really education and, like I said, putting the two together and getting people on a good course for their careers.
Right. I mean, and at the end of the day, what's interesting though about both those sides of the conversation, it really comes down to what does it taste like, right? And we haven't spent any time talking about that. Like, I mean, like, it's got to taste good.
So true. I'll no doubt offend some people here, and I apologize in advance, but I see an awful lot of these plated desserts, and it's like, oh yeah, that's really cool, but nothing that's on that plate is anything that I would want to eat. So it has to taste good. It's so important.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was on another call this morning, and we were talking about a marketing effort, and this guy's in food marketing, and we were talking specifically about that. He's like, I don't need a plate of dessert that's going to impress another chef. I need a plate of dessert that's going to taste good. Like, I don't really care that it's got like a foam and 6 elements that require, agar and like gastro, all this stuff. Like,
yeah, that's key.
It's got to taste good, right? I mean, there's a reason that we put chocolates with hazelnuts. They taste good together.
Right. It's key.
Right.
And I occasionally have all of my students sit down, and I say, sit down, I'm going to tell you something. It's going to shock you. we are making food. You know, you got to think about taste.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's where, in some ways, I've seen, and I'm a byproduct of it too. I'm not going to deny it, and I work for a company that we need it to happen. But like, I understand we eat with our eyes, but people have become so concerned with what that chocolate box looks like when you open it that they've some people have scaled back from being worried about what's inside that piece, and
Right.
you know, I think that's the industry as a whole. Like, I don't think there are people that are more traditionalists, and there are people that are more on the side of what's going on now. But they're, finding that place in the center ground is becoming a little more
Yeah,
challenging.
and across the board, and I'm talking not maybe even quite as much chocolate, but a little more dessert wise and baking wise. I'm not thrilled with this overuse of colors, to be quite honest with you. This stuff's not particularly something that I think you should be eating, and I think we can make things that are
Tread
beautiful.
lightly.
Well,
Tread lightly.
no, I love the colored cocoa butters. I do.
Right.
I guess I'm thinking more about baking, truthfully.
What's interesting is that somebody just put a comment up about, it was like when we put a mint leaf on every plate of dessert, right? Like every plate of dessert got a dollop of whipped cream and it got a mint leaf because it does. And I think that's a great example. I don't know. It's a tough conversation, right? I mean, I think that I love what's happening with confection in North America and the world, but I also, but we have to make money doing it, right? I mean, you and I don't. Like, I can write a recipe that it takes me 4 hours to make 10 of them, right? But people on this call are hopefully making money doing this, and so it has to be attainable. And how do you make that obtainable is sometimes can be challenging, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. It's such a balancing act between looks, taste, practicality, the whole thing. It's tough,
Right.
tough line to walk.
So what are you, I mean, you're not teaching anything today, but what classes are you teaching these days at the Institute?
For the past, I'll just leave it blank, years, I've taught only my class, only my chocolates class. And every now and then I might fill in for another one. I mean, I've taught a lot of different baking and pastry classes, but truthfully, I've basically not sullied my hands with flour for quite a number of years, professionally at least.
Yeah, that's like my wife sort of doesn't understand that I come home and like don't really want to make dessert anymore for the most part. Like, I don't do that here at all, right? But in the era of COVID, I've been making pizza once a week.
Oh yeah.
Right, because like we're not going out to get pizza, and it's like our thing. It's like our family thing is pizza night, and so Saturdays has become pizza day in our house. And like I've made more pizza dough in the last 8 weeks than I think I've made ever.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like everybody else on this call, I have 3 different sourdough cultures sitting in my kitchen right now that I use for various different things. So yeah.
Well, if you're an attorney right now, you have 3 different sour.
Exactly.
All every one of my friends that I didn't know was like this baker has like decided like, okay, so I'm working on this sourdough, and it's been good. It's been breeding for 6 weeks. I'm going to start using it next week. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, do you have any thoughts about that? I'm like, no, I don't. I really, whatever. Okay, cool. I'm glad you found a hobby in your quarantine, but
Yeah. Exactly.
My story about that, my first job, like not my first job, but one of my very first culinary jobs when I was in college, I come home for the summer and I'm working in this place, and like I worked for this CIA grad, this prototypical chef, right? Who my job was, we had 3 workspaces. I was to clean up behind him, and then set the mise en place in front of him, right? So that was my job.
Nice.
I would get in front of him, he would move, I would clean up behind him, and then I would set the next mise.
Oh, I want his job.
Yeah, it was great. I was 19, I got paid like at that time, like $6 an hour to like, anyway, whatever. So one day we're not real busy, and he's like, clean up the back dock. I'm like, all right, cool. So I go out, and there's all this junk, and there's like this weird Lexan tub of like unassigned goo. And I'm like, ooh. And, I lift the lid on it, it smells bad. And I'm like, this is going in the bin. I'm not even saving the Lexan, right? And so it goes in the dumpster. And
Oh,
he comes around like an hour later, and I'm like on my break, I'm like having a drink, and I'm up in the front of the restaurant, and he's like, Brian. I'm like, yeah, chef. The dock. I'm like, yeah, chef. Everything's gone. I got rid of everything. It's clean. I swept. I hosed it down. I did the whole thing. He goes, where's my starter? And I'm like, where's your starter? In your car? Like, this is like, I have no knowledge of pastry. I have no knowledge of bread. And he looks at me and he's like, I've had that since I was at the Institute. And he's like 50, and I'm like, I have no clue what he's talking about. And he's like, so he's had this sourdough starter for like 25 years. And he didn't kill me. And I don't quite know how I survived that whole escapade, but
yeah.
I killed us. I chucked it in the dumpster with the rest of the cardboard boxes and the egg cartons.
Well, you're lucky to be here, aren't you?
I'm really, really
Nice.
lucky. And the fact that I got to keep my job for the next 3 weeks was even more of a miracle, but
Yeah. Hey, I want to tell you about, and this is very timely. I want to tell you that when I was a puppy, I had the good fortune to go work for Dieter Schorner. And Dieter unfortunately just passed. And he meant so much to me, and he really has a lot to do. I like to think he has a lot to do with who I am and who I became. And so I worked for him for a year at Tavern on the Green. And I have a couple of stories that I like to tell about him. One of them is I like to say that he taught me how to be charming, but usually people point out that I've missed a lesson or two, which is true. I probably did. But another one, the pastry shop there was up on the second floor, and the kitchen was downstairs. So we would carry desserts down to the kitchen. So I'm carrying a tray and, typical industrial steel concrete staircase. And so I'm carrying this tray of these beautiful Napoleons down to the kitchen, and I fell down the stairs. And I don't mean I slipped a little bit. I fell down the freaking stairs. And
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing near you.
It's okay. And I was pretty shaken up. I went back up to the kitchen, and my friend Cindy was there. I'm like, Cindy, I just fell down the stairs. And Dieter overheard me. And as I like to say, he immediately came over to me, and with a look of the greatest concern on his face, he said, how many Napoleons did you break? But yeah. And then he came to work at school after I was there, and we were colleagues for many years. And I loved that man. So my hat's off to him.
Yeah, it's that whole don't push the speed rack, pull the speed rack, right? Same story in my world. It's like I will never push a speed rack again, as I watched.
Yeah, right.
Going on an elevator one time, same kind of deal. Yeah. But sure. All right, so a question I ask everybody.
Okay.
It's become my question.
All right.
You're it's a late night at the old Culinary Institute of America, and you're tootling home, and you realize that you need gas for the car. So you pull into the convenience mart, and you realize, well, you're kind of thirsty. So you're going to walk in, and you're going to grab a bottle of whatever. I don't know. I said Diet Coke to somebody a couple weeks ago, and they got really bent out of shape. So you're going to grab a bottle of water. You're going to grab an iced tea. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't.
Okay.
Play along. And so you're walking to the register, and you find yourself in the commercial candy aisle.
Oh, okay.
What do you grab on the way to the register?
Okay. It's probably going to be Haribo gummy bears.
Okay. That's a good choice.
Well, it is, and I'm sorry that it doesn't involve chocolate. But
I'm not offended. I just wanted to know what you grabbed.
Yeah, I think that would be it. And yeah, and if you've ever had the ones that are actually made for the German market,
way better
than the ones we get. But yeah.
I'm actually concerned. They're building a plant in Wisconsin.
Oh.
And I'm concerned that we're now not going to get Haribo from the rest of the world.
Yeah, that could be, because the ones we get, I think, are made in Turkey.
Yeah. So when I worked for AUI, I worked with Annette Meyer, and Annette was, or is still, from Germany. I mean, she wasn't from Germany. I mean, she still is. And when she knew my affinity for premium gummy, she would have her parents bring it over for me whenever they would come to see the grandkids. And I would get this bag of, gummy bears and other random Haribo items.
And so I'll ask you the same. What's your choice?
Kit Kat.
Oh,
But again, they're better in Canada across the
yeah,
border because they're made by Nestle in Canada.
but there are so many varieties of those around the world. You know?
True. And like, so what's cool about here, my boss, whenever he travels all over the world for lots of different stuff, and whenever he comes back, he brings me at least one Kit Kat bar from wherever he's traveled. So it's pretty cool.
That's excellent.
You know, so I actually have a bin of like Kit Kat bars. Like I wore he went to the store in Tokyo, like the big store,
Yeah.
and had to spend like $200. He came home and dumps all the stuff on my desk and goes, "This is for you." And I'm like, "Wow, that's a lot of Kit Kat."
Yeah, Tom is a good man. I haven't seen him for some time. And every time I do, and I ask him how the narwhal mold is coming, he seems to think I'm joking. I don't quite understand that.
Okay, so backstory for everybody listening. Like, we've been talking to Peter about designing molds for us, and we're doing this whole line of chef inspired. And so I approached you again last week, and I said, "Hey, you want to do this mold?" And you're like, have you done the narwhal yet?" And I'm like, "The narwhal? What are you talking about?" And that's the whole deal. So Peter wants a narwhal mold. Tom's concerned about the commercialization of the narwhal mold, and he's wondering if he can get you to buy one of the porpoise molds and give you a pop stick for the.
Yeah, I know. He's suggested things like that before. I find that unacceptable, but that's okay. You know.
You know, the inside joke. The inside joke is that the last mold we designed for you wasn't family friendly, and like I don't think we could do another one like that for you.
I understand. What a great project that was.
Yeah, well, that's the R-rated version after 9. People can send you messages on Instagram to ask stories about that guy. I think we finally got rid of that tool. I think we finally chucked that tool out.
Well, I don't think there would be much use for it, and in fact, I'm not sure that the artist might sue you if you actually used it. So, you know.
Yeah, we were going to use it. It was just kind of, we pull it out every once in a while and go, "Look, here's Santa with his other item."
With his object.
With his object.
His Christmas tree object.
I'd like to have been in that pitch meeting with you. I wonder how that went over.
That was really interesting. The people from the gallery contacted me, and this was just very shortly after my book came out, the first edition, and I couldn't quite get my head around it, and like, how serious is this, and what are you doing? And so I remember one of the questions I had was, we were making, it was supposed to be 1,000 a day of these little 10-inch hollow
Santa Clauses.
And the idea was to just fill the gallery with them, and we did that. But then we were also selling them. And I remember asking the owner of the gallery ahead of time, I'm like, "So how much are you selling these for?" And she goes, "Well, we want it to be very accessible. We don't want only artists to be able to get them. So we're selling them for," I think it was $125, for this pound of chocolate. Okay, good for you. That's accessible. That's a different world.
Did you sell a lot of them?
Quite a few, yeah.
So you built like you built a spinning chocolate plant in this gallery in New York.
Yeah.
Right. And you're making chocolate every day. I
was art. And me and my minions would operate this semi-automated production line. And who worked on that with me is Brian Graham from Fruition.
Did he? I did not know that.
He had just graduated, and he came down and spent a few weeks working on that with me. It was pretty great. And by the way, and I know I've told you this, but I'm saying it to everybody, he's the guy that you should get on here to talk. He'll be much more interesting than I am.
I know people are staying. Like, not only that, usually people are going by this point. They're like hanging out and watching. But yeah, but you're right. I mean, they do. We've got a project for them sitting on that table over there that we were doing a trial, trying to make a piece of equipment work for one of their things.
Yeah.
I've probably signed the NDA. I can't tell you what it was.
It's okay. I don't need to. I'll just go up and talk to Brian.
Yeah, you can tell him. I don't think Brian sent the project in, just so you know. He may not know it's here.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I'm not,
All Doesn't matter.
I'm not spilling any beans. It's good.
No worries.
It's good.
So, okay, so I know you're a bigger fan of this version than the second version.
Well,
Hey, look,
there
hey, by
was
the way, Brian is watching because he said happy to Minion anytime.
outstanding. Hello, Brian.
So I know that you were happier with this version than the red one,
Yeah.
but the red one mentions me by name, so I prefer the red one.
Okay, that's good.
So
I can
thanks for
understand that.
the shout out. I appreciate
Sure.
it.
Sure.
Um,
I actually, in the second edition, I added this chapter of layered candy bars, which is actually to me a very interesting topic because there are all kinds of both production and shelf life challenges to kind of overcome, and what can you put together and why can't you, and things like that. So I really liked that. There were just some production difficulties with the second edition where some things that had been just right in the first are not just right in the second, but most of them have been fixed, so it's okay.
got it. Anything you'd change about what would, if you were to do that book now, anything you'd change?
Oh, I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I think the first edition was just exactly what I wanted, and I don't think there's very much I would change. Not too much at
All right.
all. A few details, but not too much. No, no. It's really what I set out to do, which is great. And it's the one time in my life, Peter P. Greweling, that P in the middle, I'm pretty sure stands for procrastinator. It's the one time in my life I didn't procrastinate. I mean, I went home every single afternoon and sat at my desk and wrote, and sometimes I'd look up and the house would be dark and except me, and it's like, oh, but yeah, that was good. I've never done it before or after.
All right, so you have a couple more weeks until you go back to school. What are you doing? What have you been doing these days?
Well, I have this peak bagging habit. So, I've been hiking a lot of Catskills peaks, and I'm going to go up in the Adirondacks and camp with a couple of my hike tribe sisters, and we're going to bag some Adirondack peaks, and I might flirt with a few trout here and there. And
How many of the Adirondacks have you done? Have you done them all?
No, I only got started. I was up there for a week last fall. That was my first start. I did 8. So we're going to go up and do 8 or 10.
You did 8. Last time I was in the Adirondacks for 10 days, we did half of one. And then my daughter's like, we're going home. And we went back down. So I've got half
okay.
of one.
But
do they have a patch for that?
I'm not
Can I get a
hiking with
patch?
children. Sorry.
How many peaks are in the Catskills?
Well, there are 35 35s. So, I do all 35 every season of the year. That's kind of my thing. So, it is stupid. I know it's stupid. I know that lists are stupid, but as long as you know they're stupid, it's okay to use them because they get you out there.
I'm the one that amasses soap. Like, the little slivers of soap? I save those little slivers of soap in a little bit tin in my shower until there's enough to make a whole bar of soap, and then I use that. So lists are not stupid. I'm down with
Oh, you're a freak.
I am. I ask my assistant, Beth will hop in, she'll tell you Brian, can we get rid of this? No, it's important to keep things. You never know when you might need that.
Yeah. I confess that my kitchen at CIA suffers from a little bit of that same attitude. I try to purge it now and again, but yeah, that happens for sure, no doubt.
See, she just typed in hoarder. She called me a hoarder.
Oh,
but I
okay.
love her enough that she can call me a hoarder, and I'm okay with that. My wife calls me a hoarder. Everybody that knows me calls me a hoarder. I'm good. That's fine.
Yeah. Certain people are given those privileges.
All right. So did we cover everything we said we were going to cover? I think we did. We talked about,
I think so.
Your rise to fame.
Well, no, we never used those words, and we wouldn't.
But I think, Peter, you are incredibly gracious, and you are a humble person. Ever since we shared a dinner one night with Tom and the gang in New York when you were the star attraction for a trade show, and you were very humble that night. And I think you've always been like that with me personally. And but I think but the comments at the bottom of the screen have been about how important you are and this book is to confection in North America, and how this is how a lot of people have built their businesses.
That's incredibly meaningful to me, and that's really the only way I can say it. And
Now, having said that, somebody else just commented, humble, haha. So, you know, clearly they maybe know you.
oh, one of my students.
Well, clearly, but, you know.
Yeah, well, we
All right, so we got to come down. Like,
so.
Tomrick's got to come down for a class at one of these. When we're all allowed to travel again, and you have classes, and I'm not afraid to stay in a hotel. Well,
Yeah.
we got to come down and spend some time with one of your classes, if that's okay.
That would be wonderful. Everybody would gain from that.
Cool. That's a great question, and we'll end with this question probably. So, where do you think chocolate goes from here?
I think that quality continues to improve. I think that, you know, like there will be more and more artisans who strive to be like Brian and like Fruition, who are doing bean to bar. I think we're going to see a lot more general awareness of different flavors that chocolate can bring. I think that's the general direction that I'm seeing. You know, just more understanding, more knowledge, more quality.
Yeah. So Russell says he thinks more artisan, which I think is kind of what you're talking about. You know, I mean, I think we see that in food in general, right? I read a book now probably 10 years ago that said, you know, 10 years before that, you know, you got a cup of coffee and a donut on the way to work, right?
Right.
And now you're seeing construction workers with their latte and their croissant, right? It's not your fancy artist buying $125 Santa Clauses, right? It's everybody is sort of like food keeps doing this, and I think chocolate's got to follow that.
No,
like I don't
no
think it's a
question
choice.
about it. No question about it.
You know, single origin lavender ganaches and
Yeah.
It was from 2 weeks ago.
Single cacao tree chocolates.
This is Bob. Bob gave you these cocoa pods.
Right.
You know,
right.
Bob the tree. All right, so this is the point where I'm supposed to give you an opportunity to plug whatever you want, and you told me I got nothing to plug, Brian.
I got nothing to plug, so I'll plug Fruition Chocolate. They're fantastic.
And they're available. You can go to fruition.com, I think, and they have a Facebook page, they have an Instagram page, and you're right, they do some great stuff. And they're a Sell Me customer, which makes us happy here at Tomrick. You know, so
and
you can plug your own Instagram page, even though it's only got pictures of mountains and pizza.
Nah, it's okay.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
I
gotta plug.
If you're
Right, I gotta plug this mold because it makes me very happy.
Yep.
My first design mold. So this is available from Tomrick, and pre-order they'll be in a couple weeks. And then feel free to check out Tomrick's Facebook page, Instagram page, all that good stuff. And my Instagram is Brian Donaghy. There, beautiful. I did all my plugs in 10 seconds.
Beautiful. Well done, sir.
Brian loves us both. I think it's Brian. that's watching.
Yeah.
From Fruition. I'm not sure. Somebody from Fruition is checking in.
Okay.
So, hey, Peter, thank you very much for spending an hour out of your Friday, your weekend.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'll remind you, I'm a teacher, so I'm always surprised when people actually want to listen to me. So hey, great thing.
Well, we like your students to listen to you. Like the rest of us are we're not paying for it, so it's good stuff. And
that's it.
And Michael Rakuti just popped up a minute ago, and he's like, "Can I do it? I don't have a way to put 3 people on the screen, or I would have let him say hi." So sorry.
That'd be nice.
It is Brian. It is Brian too. Cool. Awesome. Peter, this has been great, and good luck getting back to school. Good luck at the Adirondacks. Hope you catch a trout or 2.
My pleasure. Nice to talk to you. Thank you, everybody.
Fly or
depends if I want to catch. Depends if I want to catch or not. If I'm going to play, I go with my fly rod. If I actually want to catch a fish and maybe have it for dinner, I go with an ultralight. Yeah.
There you go. Now I've learned something about fishing that I didn't know.
There you go.
All right, man.
All right. Thanks. Thank you.
Hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next week.